Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studio. And tis the autumn season. I know what you thinking. You thinking football. You thinking about Thanksgiving coming down the line, all them Halloween movies, and I'm watching them too, and so many other things. But always around this time, I'm thinking My Natural Hair Show, a production that we've built through Detroit is Different with so many creative stylists. And last year, we honored a OG to this, Nefertiti, by Textures of Nefertiti. And what she shared in her interview and on stage was her OG in a lot of this is in the studio right now. So the OG to the OG. So that's like doubling down on giving game of what this natural hair is like. Baba Ari Shen, how are you today, my brother?
I am so blessed, so blessed. I just turned 83 and I feel like I'm so blessed because my life has been so many experiences. Started out actually in 1964 in Germany when I was cutting.
Wait, you going into the story too soon.
Okay.
We gonna get this, we
Okay.
gonna ride it out.
Okay.
So like you shared already so much, Gabe, and I'm like, let's walk down this path and dance.
Yes, sir.
So first starting out, and I already know the answer to this, but we gonna
Okay.
still go there.
Okay.
Generations deep Detroiters. How many generations deep is your family to the city?
You know, I'm not really originally from Detroit.
Where you from?
I'm from a little small, all white, racist, redneck Ku Klux Klan town in Indiana, LaPorte, Indiana.
LaPorte, Indiana. Whereabouts is that?
That's well, as soon as if you go 94, as soon as you cross the Michigan border and into Indiana, the first town is Michigan City. Just a little south of that is the town LaPorte.
Okay, I'm familiar with Michigan City because the stop there sometimes is the rest stop if you ever go on like a bus trip or something over to Chicago. That's probably where you stopping, and we definitely familiar because that also means okay, we'll be in Chicago in a second.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was the so from LaPorte? Did you end up straight to Detroit or where did you go?
Well, what happened, you know, being in that town growing up in the 40s and the 50s, it was just hell. I mean, like, for example, walking down the street as a child, adult white people would pull up in their cars and holler out, "Hey, little black Sambo. Hey, little Chattanooga shoe shine boy," and start laughing and take off. You know, you had to deal with that. Then another thing, have you ever heard of a lawn jockey?
Yeah, I remember if it was more prevalent back in the day to the point where we had one of my aunties actually had one of those lamps with it. But if you've ever seen it, the Them series where it's been this like woke horror concept more so coming to life. And woke horror kind of I think really gets rooted for a lot of people with Get Out. But then Them was a series on Amazon where it plays off the whole concept of this black lawn jockey where back in the day you would see, especially like in certain suburbs, like a black man with the hat and he'd be pointing like this, sometimes with like checkered vest and different things like that. And it's just like, yeah, that lawn jockey is
And there's an origin to that.
okay.
There was a man, I think it was in the state of Washington, and they would have these black men would when they came up, they would take the horses and tie them to the posts and groom them and everything.
Yeah.
And so there was this man. It was in the middle of the winter. He's standing out there and he froze to death.
Damn.
So that was the origin of it.
Symbolism of it.
Yeah.
Ain't that something?
And then it morphed into all types of grotesque characters of us sitting eating watermelon, the Angel Mama look with the big lips and the red rag, and you know, just all types of
caricatures that grow up,
that were depicting.
grow out.
Yeah,
I know that presentation at Ferris State University kind of is some of the origins. The professor working on that really inspired a lot of Khaled's work of what he does with the mobile museum.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
So you leave LaPorte And where do you head from LaPorte?
But I was going to share walking down the street.
Okay. It
Was
was
so embarrassing and so humiliating to see almost every single white family in that town had one of those lawn jockeys, all
Damn.
different. So you see all these different versions of it.
of
Just walking down the
people in
street.
lawn jockeys.
It was just,
So you
man.
like, I got to get the hell out of here.
There was a situation where we would go to school.
Mm-hmm.
It was my brother and my two sisters. We were the only black children. The town, my father was a lot older than my mother when he married my mother. So he was a construction worker. He was a laborer. So he was working with this company that was going around different places in northern Indiana. So he had a job in LaPorte. That's why he came there.
Yeah.
And my mother was pregnant with me at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I was born there. I was born in that little town.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the doctor that was, the births were at home, and he would come into the homes and do it. And so he told my mother he wanted to name myself after him. And my father's father was named Allen. That's why he named me Allen.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so he informed my mother that I was the first black male child born in LaPorte in 25 years.
Wow.
So that made news.
Yeah, I'm sure that. Yeah, that could. Be
So every
that as
day,
we
man,
born
I was
in.
harassed by the police. Constantly every day. I was taken to jail many times, and they said I was breaking the peace. And I was sharing this with someone, and he
Even
said,
as a kid,
"Yeah,
you were arrested as a kid.
yeah, man.
Tell a
Just,
story of getting arrested as a kid.
yeah, just walking down the street, and they pull over. What are you doing?" And see, I was very militant.
Mhm.
I was always that way, you know. I was so bitter with all this, man. And so I would talk to them. What are you talking about? Get out of it, And they put the handcuffs on me and take me to jail.
And if we get the understanding of what's so funny is Hollywood, the movie Hoosiers gives a perspective of that's the Indiana I'm thinking of.
That's what it is.
Also runs concurrent of the new chapters of the Ku Klux Klan.
Yes.
That after some of the settlements and everything are rooted a lot in the Pacific Northwest and right in Indiana as well.
Yes, brother. Michigan, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
There's one of the biggest lynching in America. They caravan from all over the country to go there to Marion, Indiana. And
Where's Marion, Indiana?
That's southern Indiana.
Okay.
And there were 4 boys, and there's a picture of that. Those 4 guys hanging. That was Marion, Indiana.
Wow.
And then a brother that lived through that, he wrote a book about, I think it was called Night of Horror or something. I can't remember. He wrote a book about it because he's the only one that lived. The other guys, they killed him. So that was Indiana. So growing up in that, man, I became very bitter. And in high school, when I got to high school, it got real bad then because there was this thing with the girls and and all that, and I'm this only black kid.
Yeah, and I mean naturally.
Yeah. So I fought almost every day up until the 11th grade. And then I quit because I couldn't do it. In fact, the reason why I quit is because they set me up in the gym class. And how you're scrimmaging with basketball and you hear the balls bouncing, hitting the rims, and all of a sudden, boom, 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 silence. Look, they formed a circle around me. And this dude stepped in. He's about 6 foot and about 250. And man, he beat me real. Then all of them started beating me.
Damn.
And finally, when I got away, I went down to the locker room and I looked in the mirror, man, my face was just a bloody mess. So I went home and I just couldn't go back after that. I mean, it was so embarrassing and everything. And so I quit school. I got a job in this furniture factory and I started working right up until the mid 60s. Well, early 60s when the Vietnam thing started.
So, and right there, the furniture factory was there in LaPorte as well?
Yeah, that was in LaPorte.
Okay. And how did your family adjust to like a city like that? I know your dad was working, and some of the consciousness I think at the time is this is just the reality for blacks in America.
Yes.
And if you work hard, possibly you'll be accepted into society to accept.
Yes. And I got a lot of my work ethic from my father because he was an older guy, but he worked 2 or 3 jobs. He was a what do they call a custodian at that time, janitorial work. He had several buildings and a church and different things that he did. And he worked hard. He worked hard.
What was there any like black community there?
There was a small black community. They were all older people.
Okay.
They were all elders in their retirement age. But there weren't any children
You
until
grew up around a lot of
all white
older
kids.
black folks.
All white kids, man.
But the black folks that you had were like OGs to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very into being, good Negroes.
Yeah. And that just wasn't rocking with me.
That wasn't rocking with me, man.
So Vietnam comes in, and for people to understand the perspective, how I'm understanding, I thought that it was so much about Vietnam that I've studied, because I believe that that's one of the key catalysts that brings realities to many Americans about this idea of American exceptionalism really being tied to a lot of American exploitation.
Yes.
It was an awakening when people talk about that.
That's what I call it.
People
An awakening.
in the 60s.
Yes, sir.
So at the beginning, Vietnam, a colony of France, and ending up in having some challenges of a lot of the Viet Cong, of Ho Chi Minh thinking, okay, we may be able to reach out to America and get some support because we have no rights here. All of our resources are being taken away, and we need to address this. So even during Kennedy's before the assassination, Kennedy's like, okay, we'll help France with under the guise of we're fighting communism, because that was the Cold War, and Viet Cong are communist, and we got to stomp out communism anywhere. And as France leaves Vietnam, America steps in. And when America steps in, thinking, okay, we could be like the Korean War and just bomb the hell out of the nation. Different type of guerrilla warfare that was executed by the Viet Cong, but it dragged on the war. And it also was one of the first wars where you have media stepping up with like the cameras.
Yes.
And people
embedded,
able to see all of the dead bodies from Americans. And then almost every day it would be like, kind of like
the body count.
They say like 4,000 Viet Cong killed and 2 American soldiers. And it's like, well, damn, how many Viet Congs are over there? It's like a lot of the OGs used to say. And then you get a lot of the first iterations of post-traumatic stress disorder. And then you got this one public figure, you get the draft, and then you get Muhammad Ali saying, no Viet Cong ever called me nigga, which changed the game in the consciousness of a lot of things that Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, which I think was such a hero to so many brothers at a time, to think of someone like that being everything that America hated, but so stern and brilliant with a lot of what he delivered.
Oh, yeah, bro.
And the winds of change kind of fall with, we don't look at it, but America loses that war. But you're saying it drops right in the middle, and I'm guessing, brother working at a furniture factory, they were expecting you to not only want to be a soldier, because up to that point, a lot of the ideas of a lot of black folks, like my grandfather and uncles, was you're going to be a soldier. It's part of manhood. And if you don't want to be a soldier, you kind of, and
join the military, because there were no jobs.
Yeah.
So what was the option? Join the military.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, my situation was, I was always militant. My first protest was in the 3rd grade.
Wow.
When I refused to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I haven't done it since.
Wow.
And so when it came time, the letter came. I knew what it was draft papers. I said, I wasn't going to go in the military anyway.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let me go volunteer for the Air Force. So I can get away from all that combat and everything, and go to England where they're speaking the same language. But it was 4 years. So every branch went to all the recruiters. It was all 4 years. The Army was 3 years. I said, okay, I'll take the 3 years. And I joined the Army. And I asked to be sent to Europe. And I was blessed that they did send me because
Wait,
I had made up my mind. If I went to Vietnam, I got on my knees. I told the Most High, I will not arm my weapon. I don't want to kill nobody. So please let nobody kill me.
okay, and for the consciousness of where you're at, you're in the army, you're in Europe. What part of Europe do you go to?
I went to this place called Bad Kissinger. It's up by the Czechoslovakian border. I
Wow.
was in the armored division of it. And so I was driving tanks and personnel carriers and all that stuff. And then eventually, because when I was going over, I went on a troop transport ship full of soldiers.
Mhm.
And man, they got on that water, man. Everybody was seasick. They were thrown up all over the place. And I said, man, because it never bothered me. So I went up on the deck and I started working out. I just got out of basics. So I'd work out. And this white guy, young white guy, he was a career soldier.
Mhm.
And he saw me. So he came over and said, I'll work out with you, man. So we worked out every day. Man, he taught me everything about the military.
Mm.
And so when I went in, it was like nothing. Piece of cake, man.
So you're 3 years there, and what was the culture like being there? And also, as I've learned, and shout out to Baba Simmons, Baba Charles Simmons. I need to bring him back. But what I'm learning also is a lot of soldiers at the time, especially brothers, would start talking to the other brothers and learn not just about what's happening in military, but also just what's happening across the world. What was it like connecting with the other brothers that were passing through?
Well, on the base that I was on, I was, quote, the troublemaker
Okay.
because my sisters were involved in the civil rights movement.
Mm.
Now, when I left, I said, I'm not doing that. Ain't nobody gonna spit on me. Ain't nobody gonna put no cigarette on me. Ain't nobody gonna kick me. No. So I said, nah, I'm not gonna be part of that. If somebody mess with me, I'm gonna fight.
Mm.
So I wasn't part of that civil rights movement. And so my sisters were. And in fact, they went to the March on Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were sending me newspaper clippings. They were sending me books to read. I read all those books, Destruction of Black Civilization, Before the Mayflower, all those first books. I was reading all those. Amos Wilson stuff, all that. So they saw those books in my room. Plus, I could cut hair. I was cutting everybody's hair because the regulations for the hair had to change because we were wearing afros.
Mm.
So they let it be a little bit longer, little small, short afros. So I was cutting that, and also I was loaning money because that's one of the things that he told me to do. So and I kept myself, just immaculate, and so they left me alone. I never got ranked, but I didn't care.
Mm.
As long as you just leave me alone, I'm okay.
So cutting hair. Where did you learn to cut hair? How did you take to it? What was the flow?
I'm glad you asked me that question, brother. I started out. My brother and I wore afros before there was an afro.
Mm.
Because in LaPorte, there wasn't a black barbershop. And,
Guessing there's
barbershops
probably no
were
business
segregated.
in that. Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's the last institution that was integrated, was the barbershop, the beauty salon, and church. We're going to get into that later on, too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started cutting my brother's hair. You know those little scissors you got when you're young with the round top?
You mean the left and rights?
Yeah, those little scissors and a comb. And I would take a single blade razor, and I would do the line. And then I would put the comb in and cut and cut and cut. And I would cut our hair. I cut my hair and I cut my brother's hair.
That's
So I
takes
started
a lot
out.
of time. I'm already thinking that through. That seems like a long haircut.
And that was when your appearance was it. I mean, we were not walking around with our pants hanging, sagging, because they'd pull your pants up, boy. We had to wear suspenders even and a belt, and it was always press our clothes out for school. And, that was what we were about then. And we're always told you got to be 150%. You can't be 100%. You got to be 150% because you colored. So that was the way they motivated us back then. And so you had to, back then, you got a haircut. Then the next week, you would go back and get a line. Then the next week, you get a haircut again. So every 2 weeks, got a haircut. So we were in the barbershop, constantly. Well, there wasn't a black barbershop. So we had to go to Michigan City, which was 20 miles away. And so my mother would take us over there. But we never went to a barbershop because it was a little cheaper to go to this guy who cut hair out of his home. His name was Napoleon. And he used to cut my brother and I's hair.
Okay.
And so, but in between that, I just kept doing it. So finally, we stopped going. Couldn't afford it anyway.
Yeah.
And I would just cut my hair and cut my brother's hair. That's how I started out.
Okay.
So when I got to the military, when I got in the military and went to Germany, they sent me all my stuff, my clippers. In fact, I did conchs too.
Mm.
You know what the conch is?
Yeah, the conch
And the
is
finger waves, and I
process
did all
of
that, man.
they like I guess you could think of the classic singers from back in the day, or like the Five Heartbeats, or here's the classic one, the
Sugar
movie
Ray
Malcolm
Robinson.
X.
Sugar Ray Robinson.
Sugar Ray
In fact, we used to
Robinson.
call it the Robinson. That
Oh
three
man.
waves across the top.
Oh
Yeah.
man. So okay, now I got to give some context and stuff. So Sugar Ray Robinson, definitely some Detroit connection too, but the great boxer.
Yeah.
Some would argue greatest boxer ever. I think he fought a little too long, but I guess
Oh,
that's
way too long.
You be
Yeah.
the greatest boxer ever.
Yeah,
All these
man.
boxers fight long, but
I think he had over 120 fights. A lot. And I think he maybe only lost 3
yeah,
or 4 in the most.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the connection to Detroit is, that fight against Jake LaMotta that they base, what's that movie, Raging Bull on.
Yeah.
It's the fight against Sugar Ray Robinson,
Yeah.
but that takes place at Tiger Stadium
I
here.
didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, that takes place at Tiger Stadium, which is the old Tiger Stadium right on Olympia Field, Northwestern High School. Bang.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But every time I could shout out my alma mater and also give some Detroit history, I want to give some context. But Sugar Ray Robinson was one hell of a boxer, also businessman, and clearly had that. But I was taking it to the Malcolm X movie with Denzel Washington when he has his head in the toilet before they get arrested.
Yeah.
And it's a styling in the time. And I mean, if you all ever knew, finger waves,
Yeah, man.
some players around here that got that.
And we all experienced that. No, just a little bit longer, a little bit longer. Let me get this. Oh man, your head's burning up. We all experienced that, man.
So you're in that barber industry. So after the army, you had a skill set. Where you go after the army?
I came back to LaPorte,
Mm-hmm.
and I went back to the job because I could get seniority
Mm-hmm.
for being in the military those 3 years. So I went back to the job. I moved up to another skill level, and I was doing that for a while. But I said I want to do hair
Wow.
because it was a no-brainer. That's what I did in the military, and I made money at it. So I was,
Yeah.
but I wanted to do women's hair. 'Cause I was a young black man, and man,
It's like
it was
I
all
can
about
meet
the
some
sisters.
women easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you
And
go.
so that was an easy way to meet women.
Were there a lot of men that were stylists for women back in the day?
Not back at that time.
I mean, it's not a lot now, but
Yeah.
I assume even back then, like
Yeah.
a woman trusting,
Back then, most of the men, which were a few, they were gay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was an issue too with when I was starting out, having to say, no, I'm not gay,
Mm-hmm.
but I love women and I love to do their hair.
Yeah, back then also a lot of women being married, and I assume they husband like, oh, you going down there?
Yeah.
I know what he doing.
And I was
assume he
always
dealt
real
with that
thin.
energy.
And I was always real thin. I was born that way, man. I was always real thin. So I'm this thin guy dressing nice. I don't know about him,
So
But I was cool.
and then also the culture of getting into beauty. So did you go to beauty school? How did you
I
learn?
went to both. In fact, I went to South Bend, Indiana, Helen's Beauty School. She was an original Walker girl. So I learned all those Madam C.J. Walker techniques.
Okay, so South Bend, Indiana, people know that's where Notre Dame
Right.
is university, the Catholic university that comes on TV with all of the, all the championships and all of that stuff. And Madam C.J. Walker, as we know, that line that creates the whole premise of, what is it? Representative marketing. So like people going to different places and making sales. That's genius of Madam C.J. Walker creating that. But you meet
Speaking on that, a lot of people don't know. There would be no Mary Kay.
all of that.
There would be none of that.
All of
Madam C.J. Walker. But actually, it was a woman named Malone. What was her first name? She taught Madam C.J.
Madam
Walker.
C.J. Walker, some of it, and Madam C.J. Walker just
She ran with it.
exponentially grows it.
Yeah. Yeah.
To this day, and I mean, even like a lot of the vitamin sales and a lot of that,
All that, man.
representative
Yes.
marketing,
Yes.
it connects through that direct marketing, approach and sales.
Yes, sir.
So you learn, you go to South Bend, you take the class.
I finished school there. Well, I almost finished school there, and my best friend at that time is a brother named Shed Dunlap. We were just tight. That's when people started moving there with children our age. When I hit my teens, people started moving. My first girlfriend was a girl named Dorothy Taylor, and she was dark, brother. I loved her, man. She was dark, brother, beautiful skin. They came up from Alabama,
Mm.
and so that was my first girlfriend. Um, where was I going? Oh, and so being
In South Bend,
South
right?
Bend, learning all those techniques. Then I said, well, I want to do women's hair. Plus, the afro was really starting to manifest. And I already could do that. I started out doing that. So I went to barber school in Gary, Indiana. And that made a great impression on me
And
because,
let's also talk about the culture of Gary. As I always say, it's like you got the city up the road city. You know, like the comedians may say that's where if you owe somebody some money, or if you evading some people, or like some street business happens some way, you know, Chicago got Gary, Detroit got Flint, Cleveland got Akron,
mhm,
Cincinnati got Dayton. It's
I
like
hear you,
all these
brother.
cities, like almost like a couple towns over,
Yes,
where
sir.
you can lay low for a second. But that culture, Gary, in Indiana, like when people think of like the Jackson Five came from Gary, it's like, yo, Gary got
Yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
that black folk
You know,
funk.
William Marshall, the actor,
Hmm.
he comes from Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So Gary around, and I'm guessing this is the 70s, right?
yeah.
So what was Gary, Indiana like in
Well,
the
this
70s?
actually it was the late 60s.
Okay, late 60s. What was it like then?
Man, it was live.
Mm.
There was clubs and bars and just in fact, the Jackson Five, they used to go to this what's called Casey Lounge, no Casey something, where they would have talent shows,
Mm.
and they would always win
Oh, so you saw the Jackson Five
from
before
the
they made it
beginning.
to
Yeah,
Motown.
man. In fact, all the little boys in Gary, it was all trying to be like Michael.
I could imagine.
Yeah,
So you knew even then that it's like, yeah,
yeah.
something
We
up
know
with
that
this little
one
kid.
day that dude, man, and the whole group, because
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
all
yeah,
good,
yeah. Yep.
and so we knew one day he was going
Hmm.
to be on top. Yeah.
Hmm. So you're in Gary, you go to barber school there. So you get the balance of both.
Yeah, and see what really influenced me was Lavelle Jameson was his name, and the name of the shop was Lavelle Scientific Barber College,
Mm.
and he really stressed on the theory. He had a classroom, man, it was immaculate. He had the chairs with the little arm thing,
Hmm.
we used to have on the days. Instead of a desk, he had this chair. He had those in there, and he had all the equipment, and he really stressed that. So that implanted in my mind, man, from the beginning, going to his school, that it was about the science also.
Well, I can imagine that's a brother because I don't know how many
Oh
white
yeah,
Lavelles are out
oh
there.
yeah,
If you know a white Lavelle, I mean, that'd be an interesting
yeah,
story. I think that person got,
yeah.
but I assume that's definitely a brother. And so from Gary, where you go?
Well, I'm in Gary. I finished school. I get a license for the state of Indiana. So I started working in barbershops around Gary.
Hmm.
Um, and back in that time, man, they were very exploitative.
Hmm.
I mean, they get 60% of your money, sometimes. And so I'm
It's a
trying to
stylist watching
struggle.
right now that's like back then, right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
continue.
yeah. So I kind of stumbled through all that.
Uh-huh.
And then I decided my brother, this is 1971.
And wait, let me understand. Let me break this down. So I want to give more of a context to this too. So for people to understand, as I got my cousin that's in Cleveland, shout out Kenya, that got a shop with different suites of people that do lashes and hair and a lot of different things. You know, growing on to like the tattooing of the estheticians. But when you're running a salon or a barber shop, technically what you're doing is you're not just providing a space, but you're upkeeping a space for another independent contractor to work. So it's not as clear as like the traditional job because you're dealing with artists. It's a lot of cash. It's a lot, but you're offering a person an opportunity to be like, hey, I got these 12 chairs. You're going to pay booth rent, meaning like you get your area, you're going to pay booth rent, and then I get paid from that. And then also, depending upon if you don't have clients, whoever a walk-in is, y'all know that, the walk-in person, then we're going to get a percentage of what that may be.
Mm-hmm.
Depending upon who that person is, how they do business, it's a heck of a relationship because the owner does carry a lot of responsibility in this business, and the stylist or barber carries a lot of responsibility in this business. It's not as fluid as you all think, just because it's such a people-based business.
Yes.
So I just wanted to get that context. So basically, 60%. Meaning like 60% of whatever. If you cut somebody's hair, you get to keep $4 if you charge them 10, because we expect that $6 to come back to the shop.
Yes.
All right, I wanted to get that context.
Yeah, great. And so, and also, you bring it to my mind that, and you're probably aware of this too, is that the barbershop in the Black community was the hub of the community.
That as well.
I mean, everything went
and
down.
The barbershop.
Yeah.
To the point where you're going to like this one. My uncle, shout out to Uncle D. My uncle, Don D. Scott, wrote the movie Barbershop with Ice Cube, obviously, and Barbershop 2. So shout out Uncle D. So yeah, the barbershop is definitely a place to this day, and has always been, and the salon are places of a lot of Black culture where brothers kind of kick it, and you get game and you learn, and you get a cross section of
the barbershop, anything you want. In fact, most barbers would have a little gambling spot in the back. All the boosters, you know what boosters are. Be selling all their stuff.
Yeah.
Explain what that is.
Give the context. So a booster is a person where, if, let's say, said item falls off a truck.
Let's say that, right?
Said item falls off a truck, and you can't find the truck to return the items. But it happens to be some people in the community that will be willing to buy whatever those items are.
Right.
You have boosted that item. Let's put it like that.
Yes. Yeah, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So they would always come to the barbershop.
Mm-hmm.
And just any deals and different stuff is going on in the community, it always flowed through the barbershop. Yeah. And then in the beauty salon was the same way with the women.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a social thing with women. So, they would be in there talking about what's going on in the world and in their world, and everything is going on and all that. So same thing.
And I'm guessing this too, like the culture of both, but a man being present, just like when a woman's in a barbershop, I'm guessing it may impact the flow and the feel, because it's a different level of comfort when it's all dudes around and when it's all women around, I'm guessing.
That is so true.
So how did you navigate that space?
Well, my blessing is that once I opened my own space, and
there you go.
And because I was doing Afro natural hair, I was like the man.
And because the women, there wasn't a lot of other people in that space.
No one was.
A sister had to say, look, as much as I would rather go to a sister, if I want my hair to look like Nichelle Nichols, I got to go there.
Well, see, I've got a reputation because I recognize something right off. You can't cut a woman's hair the same way as a man. And most of the barbers, because that's what they did, they would do the same line, everything, of a masculine haircut. And I recognized that from the start. So what would happen was people would say, they'd see someone who I did their hair, and they say, something about your hair is different. It was because I would sculpt it to their facial features, and I would do soft lines, not hard, make it feminine. And then you could see that. Maybe you didn't know what you were seeing, but that's what you were seeing. So that was what made all the women start coming to me. Plus, I didn't have that barbershop scene. It was more of a beauty salon.
So I
was just the man.
We jumped the gun a little bit here. So you were traveling around. When did you get your own space?
When I went to Seattle.
So there we go. So you moved to Seattle.
Now, here's what happened. I went to Seattle, and at that time, they didn't have reciprocity. So I had to go back to school and do all, and in fact, I had less hours in that state than in Indiana. I didn't even do more hours. But they didn't have reciprocity in there. So I had to go back to school.
What drew you over to Seattle?
My brother had moved there.
Okay.
And Seattle at that time was very socially integrated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of the guys there were how can I use the term interracial marriages?
Hmm. I
Most of the
mean, it's still
guys,
kind of like that now in
yeah,
Washington,
yeah, yeah. There was Buffalo, New York. There was Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Mm-hmm.
and Seattle, Washington,
Mm-hmm.
where you could get a white girl if you wanted to. And I would watch guys move there, man, and
Ain't that something?
immediately.
I know it's a lot of sisters like, I knew these brothers even back then. It's like, yes.
So here I was. I
Brothers
thought I was in heaven
Mm-hmm.
because all these women around me, and I'm dating black women, and I
Yeah.
mean, and there's no way I could date a white woman because I had this reputation and everybody knew me and
I
everything.
don't think you can do natural.
I didn't want to, but I definitely wasn't going to do it anyway.
But I know, like I say, I know it's a lot of sisters watching now, like, yep, that's the brothers that be wanting them the most. And
Yeah.
it's like, no. But clearly, just, the psychosis. We understand the machine and the conditioning of the ideas of arcs of beauty. Hence, you tying in signature black styles all the time, even from a young age, that's unique. You were trimming the afro with, man, you was trimming them with the age school scissors and a razor, which I imagine that's got to be difficult.
And so actually, because of that, I only used scissors.
Wow.
I didn't use clippers, man. I did everything with scissors.
Mm.
And that became my trademark too. That this man, in fact, people would say they would come and watch me because I'd have all these bangles and they would be ding-a-ling and I had to sit and I would kind of dance around the chair and had different movements and stuff. Because I was performing.
Mm.
I was introduced to Tai Chi at that time too. So was able to use my body in certain ways. And I'm thinking about my health and my posture and everything. So all that I incorporated into it. So it was something to just watch me. So people would come and watch. This man, you got to go and see this guy. I mean,
And then also the scene in Seattle, along with interracial dating. So I'm guessing just the feel is different because of many things. The closeness to that side of Canada, a lot of the people coming up from California. Definitely, I assume this has got to be the 70s, so the hippie movement is probably like in full.
Oh yeah, it's full. Yeah,
effect, so free love. So the art in a lot of this is probably being taken in definitely there.
Yeah. So now, because I had to go back to school, I went to a white school. There wasn't a black barber school in Seattle. So I went to white school. Now I'm learning how to cut white people's hair and the science of it. So when I got out of that school, I kind of put that together because we weren't using angles. We weren't using facial features. We were just cutting the hair. And so I learned that in the white barber school. Plus, that guy that owned the school, he told me one day, he said, Biggers, you're doing something really deep here. There's a man down in San Diego. His name is Willie Morrow. And he had wrote a book, Styling Negro Hair. And he told me, that's how I learned about the book. And so I got the book. Now, man, I'm plugged into Willie Morrow.
Wow.
Because this man was an innovator. He had a wavy tooth comb. He had the first Afro pick. He had a concept of styling our hair.
Wow.
He became the guy to me. So I actually...
Willie Morrow.
Yes.
So I'm guessing he must have been in San Diego. He probably was on set with a lot of movies and stuff back in the day.
Yeah, man. And also what happened was because that was, everybody was going to Vietnam from San Diego.
Mm.
So he was commissioned by the government, the army, to teach barbers all over the world how to cut our hair.
Wow.
So that's how he really made his money. That's how he really got going. And then he was an innovator. And so actually in 1975, I got in my car and I drove to San Diego.
Okay. And that's a long drive, even though you on that coast, but
Yes.
that's a long
And I
drive.
walked into his shop and I said, I come here to be your disciple.
Mm.
I said, what Malcolm X was to Elijah Muhammad, I want to be to the Honorable Dr. Willie Morrow.
Okay, what was his response to that?
What do you think?
I think he'd be like, you crazy.
And it was competition.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he might rain on mine.
Yeah.
But I tried to tell him, no, man, even though I was doing things that he wasn't doing,
Yeah.
because I had taken this to another level.
So you had that exchange with them, I know, got to be like,
Mm.
what are you talking about?
Where he going with? Why he going with?
Yeah, exactly.
So he told me go back to Seattle. He said if someone has such a clientele, you need to go back there. But so then I kept calling it. So finally in 1977, the Bonner Brothers, you heard about the Bonner Brothers
Yeah,
in Atlanta.
yeah.
Well, he would go there every year, and he had a product company called Morals Curly Hair Products.
Mm.
So he said you can come to Atlanta and work on platform. So I did.
What's platform?
That's when you stand and demonstrate, what you're doing, and you usually product companies have platform artists.
And I like that way of the story as I'm learning even more. You may meet a person today, but it may take 4 or 5 years for the right opportunity to line up. And when I was younger, I know I'd be like, I need that opportunity right now. Right now takes a lot of alignment at the right times. The biggest opportunities, I believe, are in crises or new beginnings. But even before the new beginnings or the crises present themselves, crises, you don't want, but you kind of got to know a person's ilk. You got to give them that platform. I like that it's even called a platform to even know, like, all right, this brother gonna move around. You know what I'm saying? Is this sister in line with what I'm doing? You know what I'm saying? So you can't just jump out like, wow, great, come on, follow me every day. That it's rare, I think, that those opportunities present themselves like that. Not saying that it's impossible, but very improbable. So you get down to the Browner brothers.
And let me share something with you. So when I first got out of the military, I went to Chicago. Do you remember the Duke, a hair product line?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember they had those hairstyles, they had the Collegian, they had Globetrotter. That was a man named Erskine Coleman.
Erskine.
And he had a shop called Golden Shears. My sister was getting her, my sister was one of the first women to wear her hair natural.
Okay.
So she was getting her hair done by him. So she introduced me to him. Man, I said, wow. I saw what he was doing. So, and then when I went to Seattle, I knew about, there was the Magnificent Brothers in L.A., Crenshaw Avenue. They're called the Magnificent. It was Bill Kidd and his brothers. And so those were the two famous people starting out in the late 60s. It was the Magnificent Brothers.
And Erskine.
Yeah. And him with the Golden Seer. So I saw those first guys that were actually sculpting our hair. And so, man, I learned from them just by watching them and using the scissors too. And so when I moved there, I met Bill Kidd, and I remembered Erskine Coleman. So I put it together.
So
my first shop was called the Magnificent Shears.
Wow. So if I get this correct, so you do the Browner brothers, and I'm guessing at that point, Mr. Morrow's like, yo, you got something. And from there, you moved to San Diego.
No, I didn't. What happened was, I'm on platform. Now I had the first the cordless clippers. They were in a little container that charged them. So I had two of those. I had this instrument called it was something shears. It was a handle and had a blade coming out of it like a clipper, but it was long.
Yeah.
And you could sculpt with it.
Did you?
Ulster made it.
So you did it. You used, because I know you use scissors, but for the platform you used that because they wanted you to use the product or something.
Well, it's faster.
Okay.
So I could cut a lot of hair. Then I finished with the scissors, but I could
Okay.
cut a lot of the hair or sculpt it the basic style, and then I would use the scissors. So I'm on platform doing this, and I go over to my clippers, and they needed to be charged, and I said, Mr. Morrow, did you? I looked and I saw it was turned off. I said, Mr. Morrow, did you turn this off? He said, yeah. I said, why'd you do that? He said, because you're taking too long. I said, Mr. Morrow, it takes time to explain your concepts. He said, no, you just got to get off the platform. So again, the woman I was with at that time, she said, you know what the problem was? I said, what? She said, look, there was Bonner, there was Johnson, there was McBride, there was Cantrell. All those product company CEOs were all standing there in awe. Like, what is this guy doing? because I'm creating bi-levels, I'm creating asymmetrical, I'm creating all these different hairstyles with our hair. And so they're looking at me and she said, that's the problem. He saw those guys watching you. Oh, okay. So what did I do? I went to every single one of them.
So after you got off platform, you just approached them.
Yeah. And I said, I know that you guys have a market in straighteners and these chemicals, but, and I know there's a concept about identity and all this with the afro, but America is becoming health conscious. It's not going to work after a while. And I said, there is another market niche that is totally untouched, and that's Afro natural hair.
And this is in 77.
Yes. And nobody heard it. I went to Mr. Dudley, I went to everybody because they were all there. And so after that, every year I would go to the Bonner Brothers and I would go talk to them again. Go with each one of them. I said, it's coming, y'all.
Just like Mr. Moore. So the consistency in this love for hair stayed true and tried through it all.
See, there was a big decline in the industry from the mid-60s to the mid-70s because barbers actually refused to cut women's hair. I ain't cutting your hair. No, I'm not doing that.
That sounds like something men would do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then if you went to a beauty salon, they're straightening hair. They're doing all this work, so they're not going to do it.
So a lot of sisters, I'm guessing, just start doing their own hair, or
They
go to
They came to Alan Biggs.
cousin, or they go to.
It got to a point, man, where I was traveling all over the country because people would come to Seattle. That would be one of the stops. I had the salon. I opened the salon with full service. I had masseuse. I had everything.
Wow.
And so, man, all the celebrities, all of the
What celebrities? 'Cause people love celebrities.
okay, like Ahmad Jamal, Dizzy Gillespie, Esther Phillips, Peaches and Herb.
Okay.
They would, when they come to Seattle, they would come to my salon, and they would tell me, "Man, there's nothing like this. There's white salons like this, but ain't nothing like this in the black community."
You created an experience while coming in.
And so that began. That's when I really began to come to the top of the industry. I was known all over the country. So I would go different. People would tell me when they come to Seattle and experience this, what I would do, they would say, you got to come to our city. No one's doing this. So I said, if you can get 10 people, pay my transportation and accommodation, I'll come.
So you were early on in the flued out stylist.
So I traveled all over the country, man. Every major city.
What was the first city you went to?
The first city I went to was New Orleans.
Ain't that something?
And then from there, I went to Chicago. In fact, the first award I got was in Chicago. There was a group called the Braiders. No, I'm sorry, that was in Indianapolis. There was a group called the Braiders Guild, but they were out of Chicago.
Kind of.
Yeah, a sister named Heideke Burke. She's the one that did with the California with the Crown Act. She's the one that kind of put that together.
So the Crown Act, for people that don't know, even when the My Natural Hair show started, especially for a lot of black women specifically, have that pressure. And a lot of those pressures, especially in business, it's not what's explicitly said, it's what's complicitly understood. And the complicit understanding was basically, if you come in here with your natural hair, you're going to lose your job. Hence, relaxer makes the people at the job relaxed. We want to see that woman, that black woman with straight, long, flowing hair and smiling. We do not want to see you in here with an afro, a locks,
and they attribute that to being militant.
Yes.
So you don't come in with that.
Yeah.
Now that makes me think I want to share with you is that at that time, and being in Seattle, which was very small black population, and because they said at one time almost everybody in that city was educated. Because they had universities and they had community colleges and all that there. So black people that were there, you'd be the only one in this integrated job because you were the only one. When you came and applied, There was no other black person. So all of them were wearing these sculpted hairstyles.
Yeah.
And white people say, wow, who did your hair? That's art.
Mm.
So that's how I became really popular. Also, I hate to say that, but because the approval was from the white people.
And when you think of sculpting of hair and the styling different, think kind of hate to say it, think Nino Brown in New Jack City, where he has the fade and then it's like the different designs and cuts, and you probably may have trained the person that did that cut. But
Well, I was doing it all over the country. Now, I would go to every city out, even Detroit. When I first came to Detroit, no one was doing natural hair. So I brought it to the city.
when
I
did you
met
first
some
come here?
1983.
Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about that because that's where we in the meat of the Detroit is different. You come here in 1983.
And the first thing I saw,
I was 1
man,
years old.
this city is the most amazing city to us as a people who evolved during slavery, or at the end of slavery, up until the 1920s, 1930s, Detroit.
So, and you were traveling already.
And I was already traveling. So I'm traveling all the country. And I met some, it was a organization called the Black Culture Workshop. And they had a event in New York every year. They had 2 events in New York every year. And it would be like a retreat. So man, at these retreats, I mean, they had Wade Nobles, they had Asa Hilliard, they had John Henry Clark. I mean, and you're sitting right there talking to them. Because, that's the way it was. And I met everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one time I had James Smalls, Asa Hilliard, and Wade Nobles waiting for me to cut their hair.
Ain't that something? So you meet them also,
And I'm interacting
waiting
with
on
them.
you. So
Yes.
yeah, it's not like you meeting them just shaking
Dr.
their hand
Frances
like sign this
Wilson,
book.
met her.
Wow.
I mean, and I'm interacting with
cut
all
her
of
hair?
them. No, I never cut her hair.
Okay. So you come to Detroit from going to that conference. Some people at that conference.
This is another thing I noticed, that Detroit shows up. Back then, I was going to all these events.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit always shows up.
Mm.
More people from Detroit be there than anywhere else. So I met all these sisters from Detroit. They said, brother, you need to come to Detroit. We need you.
Mm.
No one's doing this. Now, there was a man named Dickie, and it was called Dickie's Den. He's the one that did all of the Jackson 5's hair.
Mm-hmm.
So he was cutting afros, but it was just the same round, long, medium, or short. So here I'm coming in with the Skullmetrics. I'm creating all these hairstyles. So they said, you got to come to Detroit. We'll even sponsor you.
Mm.
So there's a sister named Ife. She brought me here. I stayed in her home. First 2 or 3 weeks I was here. And I started working. And I immediately found
where did you work? Just straight out of her home?
out of her home, and then I opened a shop
Where was our house?
on the east side.
Okay.
I can't remember the exact address. And so then I moved to Highland Park
HP.
with a sister named Naila,
Mm-hmm.
and she opened up her home to me. So then I started working at this shop, El Swagger Studio. It's on Livernois, right off of Outer Drive.
Mm-hmm.
He had a salon, and he had a little booth in the middle of it, and that's where I worked. And from there, I went to Happy to Be Nappy, because she had the same thing. She had a shop and she had a little booth. She said, Mr. Biggers, we're putting you back there. You don't need to be in this shop. You need to be back there by yourself. I really respect her too, because she really, really, really took to me. She made her transition recently too. And so what I did was, she said, I want you to take my daughter under your wing. And so I taught her.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went into a lot of Yetunde, Nefertiti. In fact, Nefertiti, I was going back and forth to Atlanta too. And so Nefertiti came to Atlanta and stayed with me.
Wow.
And just stood right over my shoulder, man. So I'm very, very proud of her. I'm very proud of her.
So in learning and sculpting, in this journey, and it's so much that, as you said, yeah, this can be a series, and it will be a series, because I'm gonna definitely bring you back, because we gonna unpack so much more. But just the Detroit of it, I got some Detroit questions now. So you get here in '83, and it stands out that all the black influence, like a lot of people I interview, it just stands out and it's shining.
Immediately I saw that.
Where are some of the first places you went?
In Detroit?
Yeah.
Now you make me think, man.
Mm.
Well, Highland Park really impressed me.
Okay. What
And
about?
there was like Nandi's Knowledge Cafe. She was there. There was a people called the Black Collective.
Mm.
It was Mama Shoe and some other people. That
Mm.
was their thing. So I
Black
kind of
hole.
yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of hung out at their spaces
Mm-hmm.
and met them when I first came. See, some of them I met in New York at the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
So when I came here, the sister that has the bookstore on Cass.
Okay.
What's
So
her
you
name?
mean the source booksellers.
Yeah,
So yeah,
she was
Janet in there.
there.
Mm-hmm.
Janet and
Mm-hmm.
Alma Greer. You know her?
Mm-mm.
They were good friends. So
Mm.
all these people were there at that retreat. So when I came here, I already had the clientele,
Okay.
you know. And so my first shop was on 6 Mile and Bayless.
Mm.
And I painted it red, black, and green,
Mm.
the whole outside of it.
Okay.
It was Alan Bigger's Natural Hair Center. And so that's when everybody, they saw that place, man, they were coming in. So I built a very large clientele in Detroit.
So and then I know like the years because some of the places open after, but these are the people you're connecting with in '83
Yeah.
that made the connection that people can kind of tie in. Um,
Yeah, Nefertiti worked at that salon too, by the way.
mm.
Yeah.
What now I guess I would say what was because you had so many other places and everything, what were some of the people saying when you made the decision to come move here?
Well, a lot of you saying, why Detroit?
Mm-hmm.
What? And I said, man, since I've been there and I'm doing a little research, oh yeah, Detroit is the place. I was very impressed with, once you start doing research on this city, man, and you see that, I think we talked about this once, that everything was either spawned here or started here. Somehow Detroit had something to do with it. Everything
Yeah.
in terms of our development as a people after slavery.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a brother named Michael Imhotep.
Mm-hmm.
He did this video called The Great Migration. He kind of covers all that.
Mm-hmm.
He's from Detroit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Familiar with Mike.
Yeah.
Familiar with Mike's work.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm.
Because he done a lot of things with Malcolm too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with this, just tying in to natural hair, and we're going to honor you at the My Natural Hair Show. So it was so unique that I reached out to you because you were already kind of connected with some of my team working with it. And I'm like, well, you the OG for the OG. So we definitely want to turn this as an opportunity to begin honoring folks.
I'm so honored.
And being that you've been doing this for so long and traveling across the nation.
56 years.
Yeah. That's deep. That's deep. What do you think the consciousness of people around natural hair is now? Because it's just so much more prevalent now.
Well, it was like I was trying to share with them back then. The product companies is that these young people, and I have a granddaughter, and I talk to her all the time. And some of the young people I met at the meeting that we were at.
Yeah, we were
the show.
doing a rehearsal for the natural hair show.
Yeah, I'm talking to some of the young stylists, and they're saying the same thing. You see, it's about it hurts. These chemicals and stuff, this heat, it hurts. Why can't I wear my hair the way it grows out of my scalp? And then also the health part of it. Because, see, that's not just our community, that's every community in America. I mean, I've watched it, man, how you saw fitness centers opening up, you saw these equipment, more and more and more stuff, and it's just, and now people are talking about their environments, the food they eat, everything. So that's why natural hair is in today. It's not this cultural, political, social statement that it was back in the 60s. Because that's what it was back then. I'm black and I'm proud. Man, I'm so blessed I experienced that. I remember, because I was living in Chicago then, and I remember that just walking down the street. I remember walking down 63rd Street, man, for example. And I was married to at that time, and my first wife and my first child. And we all got afros. And just the way people, black power, and that feeling would go through you, man. Like, So I'm so blessed that I experienced that. I think it's that my blessing is that, like I call it the awakening also. The awakening was in the 50s. And then it just kept going. See, I was with the first organization called the Black Cultural Workshop. I don't know if you heard of them. And they were in the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking the Black Topographical Research Center. And I was with them. I helped open their first chapter in New York, in Gary. Also, the Black Panther Party. I helped them open their first chapter in Gary, Indiana.
Mm.
So I was involved in all that when I was in Gary. So that's my blessing, man. That the Nation of Islam. I started to join them for a while, but I was going to all the rallies. I was going to all the meetings, and so I've been so engrossed in this, this whole movement, and because growing up in the '40s when, I remember even thinking to myself, man, why was I born white? Man, I would have no problem,
Mm.
and then that awakening to who we are, and then start to reading books and studying and just being enlightened and waking up, man. I'm so blessed. And so today, that's my how would I say it? That's how I began. When we started doing this, waking up to who we are, I was right there.
Well, with that being said, it's so great to honor you at the My Natural Hair Show 2024. This is gonna be fun, man.
And another thing I'd like to share with you, what you shared with me about the love of our, see, that's what it's always been with me, man.
Mm-hmm.
I love us because I know who we are.
Yeah.
We're the most amazing people on this planet. Those of us who in what is called America, by this experience. See, because we come from all over Africa.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of us came from a certain part, but we were all mixed in there.
So we got a lot of us were already here from Africa,
and then a lot of us were already here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I was in Seattle, it's a sister named Shonisha. She was out of Portland, and her father was Native American, and so she spent summer vacations on the reservation, and there was a whole bunch of reservations in Washington, state of Washington, too, by the way. So she learned the braiding, the beadwork, and all that stuff from her grandmother, from her father, and then she had the African braiding too. She was one of the best braiders in the country, man.
Oh,
Nobody knows about her, but because she's up there in
Wow.
Portland. But so she was working in my salon in Seattle.
Ain't that something?
Yeah.
So yeah, man. With that, thank you so much, and we definitely gonna get you back. And then the honor of being a part of what we're doing is very humbling.
I'm so honored, brother.
Shout out to Mama Neff, and thank you so much for these kind words about how this all came together.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Black power every hour.
I love it. I love it.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.